Oh, my God.
This is the grand salon of the SS Poseidon. We open up the story in this room in the New Year's Eve celebration.
And it's at that time, almost really right on the dot, that the wave hits, and the whole ship turns upside down.
And this room is one of the few rooms that are not submerged in water, but of course the ship is settling in the water. The survivors in this room, which there are very few really, are in a quandary about what to do.
May I have your attention, please? That's the way out. That's our only chance.
Don't listen to him! We've got to stay here till help arrives.
Help from where? From the captain? He's dead. Everybody's dead who was above us before the ship turned over, because now they're underneath us, under the water.
That's not true!
May I have a bell, please?
Quiet on the snow.
I've got a cast of 10 people, 10 lovely people, who really have to go through, well, to put it mildly, hell. They have to climb to great heights, and some of them are not very fond of height. And they have to go through fire, they have to go through water, they have to go through steam, they have to get dirtier and more bruised and more burnt. And the very physical problem of taking 10 very important actors and actresses through such a grueling experience is already enough to make it the toughest film I've made. You'd be astonished at how much of the really tough work the stars have done themselves.
Nani, you all right?
I'm sorry. I can't move. I can't.
You know, I think it's always interesting if an actor can do whatever he can do to make it more exciting for an audience.
I'm a very good swimmer. Johnny Weissmuller taught me to swim years ago in Brooklyn. But I want to practice underwater swimming.
I did give a solemn warning to every member of the cast. I said, now look, before the film is over, you're all going to hate my guts, but I can't help it.
This picture for a production designer has been both a nightmare and a dream. A nightmare just because of the nature of it, the upside-down sets, the lighting, any hint that we can give that the ship is upside down. The dream, of course, is the opportunity to have a picture like this to work on comes along just once in a career.
Please, you know, which is a very good thing. I must talk to you.
May I have a bell, please? All right, may I please have your attention? Hold the camera. I need a couple of dead people, maybe somebody on the light here, Paul. Right there. Yeah, a dead lady would be good.
Now, is there somebody, a woman, that could fall in here?
Would you raise your hand? Those that are going to get killed, raise your hand. All right.
Owen Allen has, as a producer, a tremendous drive, stamina, and tremendous determination. He also, of course, has had experience as a director. And I know that if he says such and such a thing is going to be done and will be ready for you to shoot, I know it's going to be ready.
I don't want anybody to run any risk of being hurt.
What we're going to do.
Yeah. Okay, so that no one is in danger, is that
That's
right?
right. That's the reason why I want
Not
to do
one chance in 10 million.
I don't think there's one chance in 10 million.
Okay.
He's very dynamic, Irwin. And he's gotten this movie together at a time when they just don't make movies like this anymore.
And people, I say I'm doing a film, and they say, oh, yes. And they say, oh, yeah, but wait a minute, I'm really doing a film, you know. And I start telling them about the people in the film and what we're going to do and the shooting schedule. And their eyes get bigger and bigger. And
Let's go make a rehearsal.
Yeah,
huh?
let's make a rehearsal.
You've all been marvelous. Just be patient a little while longer. I'll have you out in a minute.
And the 5 ADs and 10 hairdressers, you know.
Now, at this point, there will be the first explosion, and you will run. Now, where are the dead people? Good.
They're not going to just take a bucket and throw the water in your face, you know. It's going to be a wall, even on the set when we shoot it. It's got to be a very big wall of water.
Let me hear speed, gentlemen.
B camera.
You are now milling about and concerned.
One of the big problems about this film is that the hardware could get in the way of the people. And to quote Frank Capra in his autobiography, people really and truly are interested in people. Now, all you people that are here...
Gene Hackman, Ernest Borgnine, Red Buttons, Carol Lindley, Roddy McDowell, Stella Stevens, Shelley Winters, Jack Albertson, Arthur O'Connell, Leslie Nielsen, producer Irwin Allen, director Ronald Neame.
These were movies that even if you weren't working that day or that week, or the stars even, would come and stand around to watch the other people doing these spectacular things. So it was very, very thrilling and exciting. And I've never known of a movie where people come when they're not working and stand around and watch. They did.
People either enjoyed working on an Irwin Allen picture or they didn't, and that, I think, goes for every other picture. But all of us who have ever worked for Irwin Allen and did, you know, stuff for Irwin, always rooted for Irwin.
The first thing that Irwin Allen said to me was, "Have you read the book?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, I haven't." He said, "Great, great, don't read it, because everybody hated your character, and we don't want them to feel that way about you in the movie."
He was just at his best. He was really the captain of the ship, of the Poseidon.
He was a real old-fashioned showman, which doesn't exist anymore. He really knew how to make movies. He knew how to get people who knew how to make movies.
Gene was nominated for the Academy Award, and then he won it for French Connection. So we had a great big cake for him, and everybody was just like in awe of him. You know, congratulations. We were all very happy.
My character had a crush on him in the movie, and he was very fatherly towards me. Everybody was kind of like my surrogate parent in a way. Shelley Winters was a force on the set. She was very outspoken, and, you know, you could kind of always hear her presence.
When I read the screenplay, I said to my agent, "The fat lady gets a nomination, you know." I didn't know it was going to be Shelley.
I died pretty soon. I fell down the flue rather early, which I must say was one of the scariest days I ever saw, because I watched the fellow who did that stunt, and was a direct fall like 40 feet or something. The camera, he went down. And if that guy had missed, you know, wow, he would have been lacerated. It was a wonderful stunt, but I didn't do it. Thank heavens.
It was arduous, even for an 18-year-old. I can't imagine what it was like for the older members. We did swimming and climbing and running through fire, and it was pretty real. It wasn't special effects.
Paul, our stunt guy, trained all of us. You know, so we knew what we had to do, and we were trained to do it. Shelley worked for 2 months with a scuba diver at the bottom of her pool to get her breathing up. We were all taught the breathing stuff. The hardest for me was height. I am terrified of height. I mean, I can't go up a stepladder 2 feet off the ground.
I'm sorry. I can't move. We climbed a lot on rafters with fire around, but, you know, it was all pretty set up for us not to get hurt.
It was all like clockwork. And I was talking to Red a couple of months ago, and I was saying, you know, like, nobody got hurt, nobody slipped, nobody even had a cold. And we went through hell and back making the movie.
For the most of the film, we were wet and dirty and climbing around. And so that was the first part of the physicalness of it, because we were really uncomfortable.
The set was upside down for the most of it. When you've got that much steam and smoke on a set, it's tiring.
I remember sleeping on mattresses. It was strange. We had all kinds of stunts with fire and water and all this stuff. And I can remember sleeping in a corner somewhere on one of the stunt mattresses.
It was difficult also because it was primarily an action film, which Neame, I thought, handled masterfully.
Ronald Neame was a very kind man, gentle. I just remember a quiet force behind the camera and everybody else running around screaming and carrying on.
Ronnie is a gentleman, an English gentleman. And he just handled us all beautifully, absolutely beautiful.
This has come to be probably the most beloved picture that I've done.
Poseidon was like this gigantic success, and, you know, we're still talking about it, which is amazing.
I think Poseidon Adventure holds a special place in history.
I would say of everything that Irwin did in his life, I think he'll best be remembered for the Poseidon Adventure. I think it was, for that genre picture, I think it was the best. It was just a fabulous, fabulous picture.
Poseidon Adventure is a good one for me to compare to the sort of theoretical framework that I use, which comes out of mythology and the study of the work of Joseph Campbell and this thing called the hero's journey, which is a model for most stories. I mean, they almost all have some elements of this, and Poseidon Adventure, being an adventure, has a lot of those aspects in place.
One of the classic texts that the Poseidon Adventure evokes is Dante's Purgatorio, the central movement of his Divine Comedy.
They are going deeper and deeper into the ship, and they're pushing aside dead bodies in the corridors, and several of the characters on the team are done away with very brutally and abruptly. So it's showing you, as Dante's Inferno does, all the bad things that can happen to you on the journey of life.
The tidal wave literally turns the world upside down. And these people are now in a race to survive, in a struggle to survive. And the metaphor is clear, you know, who deserves to die, who does not. It's almost like a Pilgrim's Progress.
The movie is sort of dividing the cast into those who are going to be like sheep and just go along with the conventional wisdom. But the movie is showing a way out, which is to accept the new doctrines of this new kind of religious leader.
Pray for us, but don't do this. Climbing to another deck will kill you all!
And sitting on our butts is not going to help us either. Maybe by climbing out of here we can save ourselves. You got any sense, you'll come along with us. Grab a hold.
Faith and trust are huge issues in the Poseidon Adventure, and it all starts, especially when Susan has to make a quite literal leap of faith.
Come on, Susan. Jump, we'll catch you.
I can't!
Don't be afraid. Jump. Trust us.
And from that point onward, issues of who are you going to trust are forefront in the film.
People love heroes. They want to be heroic. They want to know that we all have that within ourselves. And we do. And we never know it for sure until some sort of disaster happens.
We're cut off from the rest of the world. They can't get to us. Maybe we can get to them. You've said enough. Now get out of the way.
Reverend Scott is a leader for sure. He's a natural leader. You can see that a number of times in the film when there's a vacuum and everyone's waiting around for what to do. He jumps right in. He's the kind of guy who is sort of gung-ho about taking responsibility. He's not afraid of it. He's not that kind of reluctant hero. But he's a questioning hero who sort of knows what he's got to do in order to save the day and is willing to make that sacrifice.
Follow her.
Wait a minute. Don't you ever say please?
If it'll get you up that tree, please.
After Reverend Scott and the others have climbed the Christmas tree, they're standing by the linen service door, and we see the grief and the anguish on his face as he closes the door, knowing that those people who are left behind are going to die, and yet completely powerless to save them because they have chosen to stay behind and not to save themselves.
Rogo?
Yeah.
Bring him down this way.
All right, everybody down this way. Come on, baby.
Oh, this is a bunch of crap. We're sinking and nothing's going to keep us from drowning.
Keep moving.
Lieutenant Rogo is really the voice of trusting in systems and trusting in authorities and trusting in established ways of doing things. Strangely enough, although he's a detective lieutenant, is not a risk taker. He wants proof. He wants to know what you have seen with your own eyes. He is not one to launch out on some sort of a fool idealistic crusade like Reverend Scott.
Do you know what a flash fire is? Well, mister, I'm not going to let you kill us. I'm going through that door, Mr. Rogo. You can either stand aside and close that door to keep the air from coming in, or you can try to stop me.
At one point, they look at each other, and Reverend Scott points out, you know, you're really looking at yourself here. We're not all that much different.
I think what I don't like about you, Scott, is your attitude. Or does it go deeper than that?
Maybe we're two of a kind, Mr. Rogo. And you don't like looking at yourself.
And I think there was some of that going on in the story of Peter and Christ, that these were equals on some level. They were parallel characters and just had gone down different roads in their lives, but then were brought together by this experience.
Wait a minute. May I make a suggestion, please?
It's Mr. Martin who even plays a kind of a mediating role between Lieutenant Rogo and Reverend Scott.
The rest of us would feel much more secure if you two would stop shouting at one another.
He's a kind of what I would call a reluctant hero in the sense that he didn't ask for any of this, but he does rise to the occasion. And I think that's one of the themes of the movie, is how adversity will test people. And some people pass the test and come out with flying colors because they discovered things in themselves that they didn't know were there.
Val, be careful.
Man, you think I'm planning to be careless?
The Rosens have an interesting part to play in all of this. In my mind, they represented this sort of Jewish tradition of the family, that was the value that got them through everything else.
The Rosens really serve as a voice for the film's emphasis on life and on the very deep importance of human life.
If any of us are saved, I hope it's those two children. They still have their whole lives in front of them.
Stop giving our lives away. We're going to come out of this. All of us.
And a little child shall lead them. There was a lot of emphasis on that in the film, that this young boy knows more because he's curious and because he has explored the workings of the ship.
Look, kid, this isn't some toy boat in a bathtub, so you let us figure it out, huh? Now,
I'm sorry, sir, but Charlie, the third engineer, he told me that back by the shafts, the hull was only 1 inch thick.
He knows something, and some of the other characters don't want to accept that, but that's a little bit of wisdom from the Bible, that sometimes the innocence of children is stronger or more effective, more useful in survival terms than is the wisdom of the elders.
help will be here. I'm staying right here.
Oh, there he goes. That's my old man.
Look, Linda.
I wonder if Linda Rogo plays a kind of Mary Magdalene role in different ways in this film. The obvious connection is that of the reformed prostitute who makes something good out of her life. But in another way, Mary Magdalene in the Gospels is a voice who believes at times when the male disciples do not, especially after Jesus' death and resurrection. And she is a driving force at the beginning of the film in getting Lieutenant Rogo to go along with the entire escape plan.
You get your ass down here with us, mister, right away.
Hey, you ought to watch your language, preacher. You sound like you come from the slum or something.
You son of a bitch, go help him!
Okay.
I wanted him to help the preacher because maybe, just maybe, this preacher knew something more than we did. Maybe he was closer to God than we all were. Maybe he had some power that would give us grace and let us get through and get out of it, a miracle though it might be.
There it is, Mr. Rogo! Just like I told you!
Of course, the climactic moment of self-sacrifice in the Poseidon Adventure is when Reverend Scott leaps from the catwalk in the engine room out onto that big red valve handle.
You want another life? Then take me!
So it's at this moment that Reverend Scott is solidified as a kind of a Christ figure. He gives his life in the climactic moment so that everybody else can get to safety.
Reverend Scott's role is to be that kind of hero who doesn't make it all the way through, but through his sacrifice makes it possible for everybody else to do that. And that's a classic hero's journey idea.
All right, now what? Dead end.
In the closing moments of the film, Lieutenant Rogo undergoes a kind of conversion experience when he finally comes to admit that Reverend Scott was right all along. And there's a wonderful moment there where, after banging on the hull to attract their attention, Ernest Borgnine kind of stares up into the camera and literally sees the light as the blowtorch cuts through the hull.
Oh. The preacher was right. That beautiful son of a bitch was right.
The movie is part of the human potential movement, you could say, in the sense that it is encouraging us to dig a little deeper and to find out maybe some surprising powers that we might have.
It seems to me that the religious themes in the Poseidon Adventure cannot be accidental. There's just too much richness there, too much that's overt, and too much that seems to be woven into the very fabric of what the story is about for this to simply be coincidence.
The movie was offering fresh sensations. And it was part of a whole trend at that time to try and shake the audience up a little bit. So it was really part of movie history.
Stirling was a compulsive, committed writer.
Stirling was a real artist. He was really without the pretentiousness.
To young filmmakers at that time, he was a kind of, God, you couldn't do any better than that.
He was always accused of doing too many things at one time. And my answer was always, if you could do things as well as he did, you know, then do 2 or 3 things at one time.
He had conquered all the mediums.
He was an extremely professional writer.
The joke was, how can Stirling Silliphant be so fast? And the answer was, he has an electric typewriter.
Stirling would be doing the project he was hired to write. Then he would be planning an original screenplay. And then he would be starting on a project that he was then hired to write after the first project.
The television that he is most remembered for and honored for began with a half-hour show called Naked City, which was based upon the famous movie. And Stirling did something like 31 of the first 39 half-hour shows. And on that basis, he and the co-producer, Herbert B. Leonard, decided that they would do a television show called Route 66. And this is the crown jewel. Route 66 is arguably the best written, best produced television show that was ever put on TV.
Route 66 was an amazing success. Who would have thought of taking 2 young guys and putting them on the road? Nobody ever did that before.
After Route 66 went off the air in 1964, Stirling switched into features. As a recipient of the Oscar, that changes a whole lot of things, and especially for such a quality movie as In the Heat of the Night.
Then he went out and did a string of pictures that were very hard-hitting. He had a combative style about him.
And he worked on, of course, the Poseidon Adventure. His structure is impeccable. The pacing, the way one character is introduced and segued into another, and how he all makes it build, it's an extraordinary achievement.
All right, everybody down this way. Come on, baby.
Oh, this is a bunch of crap. We're sinking and nothing's going to keep us from drowning.
Keep moving.
I was very proud to have his name attached because I thought he was great. And it was a pleasure to meet him and to be around him and to know he was a part of it. We all felt that this would be one of the best pictures we ever did.
It was a monster success. And that started the relationship with Irwin Allen, because following that, he did The Towering Inferno, which was an extremely difficult adaptation because there were 2 books.
Warner Brothers had 1 book, and the other book Fox had the rights to. One, I believe, was The Glass Inferno, and the other book was The Tower. They put it together, and the script started to be developed.
The script would often be rewritten in production, and then you'd have red pages, green pages, pink pages, white pages. It started to look like an ice cream dessert after a while.
And Stirling had no compunction about rewriting. I mean, he was proud that anybody would think enough of him.
Him doing Towering Inferno was a departure for him. Remember, he's a dramatic writer. He's a black and white writer. And this is all action and miniaturization, special effects, and it was a challenge for him.
It was supposed to be snap, 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 each scene following each other swiftly, and he realized that if he took the time to describe each scene, that pace would be shot. So he took to using a shorthand. You know, you would have interior apartment crappy.
He was very popular at the time and very successful, and he was one of the writers who was known to take instruction. In other words, he would listen to what his director said, he would listen to what his producer said.
Stirling would be brought in to really doctor up the big scenes, and they had an incident that happened in San Francisco where Steve McQueen got the idea that Paul was coming off better on the film than he was, and he wanted the end sequence to be rewritten to reflect him a little bit more.
You know, we were lucky tonight. Body count's less than 200.
Steve says, you know, you give me all this dialogue, and Paul just stares at me with those blue eyes of his and steals the whole scene. And Stirling says, well, you know, Steve, you wanted this dialogue. This is your dialogue, and you got blue eyes too. And he says, yeah, I know, he says, but give him some dialogue. Make him work.
I don't know. Maybe they just ought to leave it the way it is.
And Stirling was very baffled because in the next meeting, Steve said, no, I still don't like the dialogue, do something with it. And in frustration, finally, Stirling, the diplomat, he'd been around a very long time and he knew not to ruffle. So he found a way to talk to Steve as they were going down a hallway. And he said, Steve, there's nothing wrong with that dialogue. What's the problem? And Steve turned, stopped, looked around to make sure no one was overhearing, and he said, I have a problem with S's. I have a slight lisp.
You see, in a fire, wool and silk give off cyanide gas. Do you have any sporting good manufacturers like table tennis balls? They give off toxic gases. Now, do you want me to keep going down the line?
So Stirling said, for God's sake, if you told me it's easy enough to write dialogue that don't have S's.
You know where to reach me. So long, architect.
Stirling was not a sellout. He just believed in doing well with his talent. And, the man could sit down and talk about any subject you want.
He just knew about everything. That's what made him so fascinating to talk to.
Stirling always wanted to educate people. He was always ahead of things.
He was the sort of person that could be with the Queen of England or with some homeless person, and he would know exactly what to say.
Later, he studied martial arts and got involved with Bruce Lee and went to Asia and lived there for some time.
He said to me, David, in one of my former lives, I lived in Thailand, and I'm going back to where I used to be. So he had a Beverly Hills garage sale, as he called it. He sold everything he owned.
As a challenge in his own personal life, he became, sort of a physical expression of the things he'd been writing about all this time.
There was something in him that was determined to communicate and basically make us understand the world better and make us in tune with it and make us alive.
Life is up there. And life always matters very much, doesn't it?
I think that was an important thing to Stirling Silliphant. The idea that the individual life matters, and that what you do makes a difference in the world, what you say makes a difference, even what you think and feel.
Listen to me, all of you. Mrs. Rosen is dead. We can't bring her back, but what we can do is keep moving and be strong. That's what she would have wanted.
In 1996, it's very vivid to me. My birthday is April 24, and on April 25, I see this now so clearly. I was having breakfast. I was eating my breakfast cereal, my Cheerios. And on the radio, an announcer said Academy Award recipient Sterling Silliphant died today in Bangkok from prostate cancer. And I choked.
I really loved the guy. I really did. I felt a tremendous amount of loyalty to him because he did to me. And we had lots of good times together and lots of laughs.
If there was one message, it's that you had to feel free and honest and true and experience the voids that life was in an honest way. And so at the end of his life, he fulfilled that theme of his work.
You shouldn't be passive about life. You should take life by the horns and go out and live it very fully.
And to this day, if I'm having a little problem with a project or anything, I say, hey, Stirling, give me a hand here. Because maybe, if we want to believe in reincarnation, who knows what else is possible. And that's a very Stirling Silliphant way to think of life.